good morning. We're going to get started. I just have a few announcements. The exhibit hall is open until 5 o'clock today. There will be a special gathering of early intervention age children and their families in room 109. The Pat and Ida consultants and Elwyn parent partners will be there for a meet and greet. So please grab your lunches and meet in room 109. Today we have the special 20th anniversary panel presentation at 4:30. Remember, in order to get continuing education credits, you must complete and hand in a verification form at the registration desk prior to departing on your last day of attendance. And this is where you will put the codes given at the end of each presentation. You can access the PowerPoint and any handouts for this session via the conference website or the Groupio app. And we're also asking that upon completion of the presentation that you give us feedback for that session via the new Groupio mobile app. So today I am so honored to have the ability to to introduce our presenter this morning. Mike Miklos is a behavior analyst and a Pennsylvania certified school psychologist and employed as an educational consultant for the Pennsylvania Training and Technical Assistance Network. His responsibilities have included training staff, developing systems for data-driven decisions, completing functional behavior assessments, program review, and consultant training. He continues to provide site-based training and consultation related to autism support services and special education. Currently, Mike serves as a statewide lead consultant for the Patent Autism Initiative and coordinates efforts for Patent Autism Initiative, ABA supports, and the National Autism Conference. This is someone who works tirelessly in our field and is incredibly dedicated to the work that he does. He's an inspiration to me, my classroom, and hundreds more. Presenting this morning on a topic that is such a dire need. It's my pleasure to introduce Mike Miklos.
I'm going to probably be down here most of the presentation rather than at the podium. It's easier to talk to everybody. Good morning. Good morning. It's great to see everybody. My assumption is that most of you are here because you have heard what a Mand is to a certain extent, even though I will try to go into some detail on further clarifying what a Mand is. But the basic idea of a Mand is that it's when somebody wants something, they say it, usually to somebody else, and then they get it. So you want it, say it, get it. It's a very simple idea in relation to how language works and how people can communicate their needs. So that's what we're going to be talking about. And this is such an important topic because without demand, we wouldn't be able to initiate interactions with each other. And I'm going to really try to spell out how that works as I go. Throughout this discussion, I'm going to be embedding an idea that when we talk to each other, that talking is a result of how others respond to us. That our communication doesn't just sort of emerge from within us like a plant that's in soil and is growing and words just come out of us. It's really a interaction. Our talking to one another is the result of a listener being there and of events that happen in the world around us, so that if we are in a position where for instance, just a little while ago, I was in a position where I wrongly, in this case, thought that the batteries were dead in this slide advancer. So what did I do? I tried to make it work on my own. It didn't work. So what did I do? I went up to my friend Laura in the back, and I said, Laura, can you help me get batteries? And the result of that, my saying, Laura, can I get batteries, resulted in her finding somebody else who could get the batteries and put them in. The whole interaction started with a situation in which there was motivation. There was this established wanting of something that occurred. I wanted batteries, I asked for batteries, and I got them. Now, you can't, sometimes you get what you want and you realize it's not what you really wanted. What I really wanted was somebody to teach me how to turn the on switch. The batteries are actually good, but such is life. Okay, so the idea here is that we are going to talk about manned behavior, about making requests to others through an analysis that looks at what is going on in the world around us when we make a request and what happens after we make the request. So we're going to look at three parts of the interaction. One is, of course, what the child does. What the child does, and that would be the speaking behavior, the child saying something. And we're going to look at what happens right before they say something, which is called an antecedent. Antecedent before, behavior, and consequence after. What happens following the child saying something? The reason I'm going to focus on that relationship is that I think none of us do things in a vacuum. We all are constantly in a world where things are changing around us all the time. And what happens in the world really alters to a large extent what we do on a minute-to-minute basis. So in the situation where the remote isn't working, I start fiddling around with it. My behavior has a specific change. In that case, nothing happened. I couldn't get the slides to move. So then, because of that, I do something else. It wasn't until I looked to get the slides to advance that the idea of asking Laura to get batteries for me ever occurred. It was only the result of events in the world around me. If I was sitting at breakfast, it would be highly unlikely I would say the word batteries to somebody. What I did say was hot sauce. I had some eggs this morning, and I asked for we ask under conditions. The world around us changes. So that if I say some word throughout this training and you don't know what it is, you're going to probably, it's not until you hear that word that you're not familiar with that you're going to turn to the person next to you and say, what did he say? It's conditions that alter what we say. And what's really nice about this is the conditions under which we do stuff, we can change. Okay, so that if we are a parent of a child who is learning to talk, or a teacher who is professionally responsible for helping a child learn to better communicate, we could do something about the world, the antecedents and consequences. Like, for all I know, Laura, who is a skilled behavior analyst, was trying to get me to Mand. She might have been teaching me how to Mand. And what she might have done is turned this off and not shown me where it was, or put dead batteries in it. And by doing that little manipulation, and I know you, Laura, by doing that little manipulation, it makes it more likely that I'm going to say batteries. Laura could have controlled that situation. She's sitting there back there shaking her head. No. Okay. She didn't do that. But it's possible to have done something like that, right? Okay? I'm going to be talking about lots of ways we can do that, lots of ways we can help children learn to ask for things. And it's important for a lot of different reasons. And as I go through, as I just said, what we're going to be focusing on is what are the conditions that lead to a child asking for something? How is it that we can change things in the world to make it more likely that a child talks and asks for things? And it's a very important undertaking. So a more formal definition of a mand is that first, a mand is verbal behavior. And I think if you've been at this conference since yesterday, and if you continue throughout this conference for the next couple of days, you're going to hear the word verbal behavior a lot. Okay? And the question is, well, what is language? What is communication? What is verbal behavior? Well, I'm going to say that what verbal behavior is when we do something to affect somebody who's listening to us. We do something and a listener responds to us in some way. And the listener responds in a certain way because throughout their life they've been taught to respond that way. Let me give you an example of that. When I was very, very little, my mother was probably interacting with me, or one of my siblings, and I went to climb on something that looked like this, and they said, chair! And they said, chair again, and eventually I said, chair. Okay? Now, as a result, I eventually learned that in the presence of this, when I say chair, somebody's going to say, that's a chair, yeah, let's sit on it. They're going to respond to me for having said chair in the presence of this thing. But I have a dear colleague, Amir Stipuglia, who was raised in a Spanish-speaking family. When she saw this thing, people didn't say chair, they said silla. They used the Spanish word for chair. And why did they use that word? Because just like my family's history is that they were taught to say chair, in Amiris's family, they were, because of their culture, they were taught to say silla. So that the environments in which we grew up, the culture shaped what we said in certain situations. Now, if I said cow in the presence of this thing, people wouldn't have responded to me the same way. They probably would have sort of scowled at me or said, no, that's not a cow, that's a chair. There would have been some kind of feedback from the environment that led me to say chair. So the whole point I'm making, when I say verbal behavior, I'm not talking about anything fancy here. It's just the idea that the tendency is when you say something, you say it to have some effect on another person. Although sometimes we talk to ourselves too, and sometimes we are our own listener. That happens too. But for the most part, we're talking to other people, and we say things to other people, and how other people respond to us make us say what we've said before again in the future at some point. Okay? So that's all verbal behavior is. So a mand is a type of verbal behavior. So we're saying something to somebody else who will understand what we said because they've been taught to say it the same way. Their culture has shaped up to say it the same way. So basically, verbal behavior is behavior that somehow affects somebody who's listening to you. And it is related strongly to an antecedent condition. What's happening right before you say something is what's called motivation. And I'm going to talk a good bit about what motivation is and how we can work with motivation. But motivation, in common terms, is simply wanting something. Now, there's a problem you're going to hear me talk about throughout this session. Wanting something is generally thought to be something that comes from within us. It's something that we carry around. So you look at somebody and say, oh, I think they want this. But really, that's not much helpful. My friend Patrick, who chose to sit up here in the front, there might be all sorts of things he might be wanting right now, okay? But I can't tell just by looking at his head. And what he wants will change over time. So as we get closer to a break at whatever time that is, 10:15 or something like that, Patrick will probably want to get up and stand up and go out and get some snacks. Okay? But right now what he wants is to listen to me talk. He came to this session to do that. What we want is affected by the conditions we're in. That if we look at it as something the child carries around inside their head, we can't really understand how that got in there. Okay? The idea is that if we're looking at wanting something as a change in the environment, as an antecedent to behavior, it's really a very optimistic way of looking at things, because we could do something about environmental conditions that alter whether you want something. And if we could do that, then we may be more likely to set up conditions under which the child is going to ask for something, because we've established wanting it at that time. We've sort of set up conditions where they're more likely to do something to get that thing. And that sounds like a fairly simple idea. It really does get complex when you're trying to teach an individual with autism who may not look at another person, who may only want a couple things. They may only want to spend time peripherally viewing something dangling off to the side of their face, or they may only want to line up toys a certain way, or to jump on a trampoline. They may not have a lot of different things that they want. And another challenge that will come with teaching children with autism is frequently the idea that it's hard to get them to repeat something you have said when you want them to repeat it. So that when I was talking about when I was a little guy learning that this was a chair, I had to repeat what was said to me in order to do that, to learn to say chair in the presence of a chair. If I couldn't repeat what somebody else said, it would have been really hard to learn. Often children with autism will fail to look at other people, to make eye contact, to watch their listener. And that becomes an issue too, because that will interfere with their ability to learn to monitor the person who they're talking with. So if my batteries die in this, again, I know to look in the back to see if Laura's looking at me. You know, I know, or I could look over here at my friend Carrie and say, hey, Carrie, can you, but my first thing is I have to find a listener who is likely to help me with responding to that request. Okay? So a more formal definition of demand is Mands are verbal behavior, motivation is an antecedent, and the third part is demand specifies what is going to be valuable to the person. Okay? Mands specify the reinforcement, and I'll tell you what reinforcement is in just a little while. But basically, Mands specify what the person wants. So if I realize that I'm not sure how long I've been talking yet, so I want something, and I turn to Carrie and I say, what time is it?
9:16.
Hearing her 9:16 is what was the result of my saying what time it is. I specifically got that. If I said, oh, I need a marker, I say marker, and Carrie hands me the marker. Okay? It specifies what we want. If I want, Patrick, give me 5. I say, give me 5, and boom, I get a 5. Okay? It's directly what we say. It would be weird if I said, give me 5, and Patrick did this. That would be odd. Okay? And I probably wouldn't say, give me 5 very long if I kept getting this instead of what happens after we mand, getting the specific thing we said we wanted, is what leads us to in the same situation where we want the same thing, to say that. To say the same thing again. It's that history of interaction that sort of shapes up how we go about asking for stuff. So, I don't want to give, I'm going to do two things. One is I'm going to try to make the act of asking for what we want as simple as possible. But I want to also emphasize that this is not a simple process. If anybody here has had to try to teach a child to learn to ask for things, when the child hasn't developed skills such as watching another person, who hasn't developed skills such as being able to repeat what somebody has said to them, who tends to engage in repetitive actions all the time. There are so many little things that we need to attend to effectively help that child learn to ask for what they want, so that if you've been engaged in those things, you know it is very complex. Because there may be simple things that we ask for, such as asking the waiter to bring you an extra fork at the dinner table, or if you're eating out here at the conference, or asking somebody, where are my keys? You say, where are my keys? And they say, they're on the counter. And there's very direct responses. But requests get very complicated because sometimes when we ask for things, how we ask for them influences whether the person will give it to us or not. And I'll explain that as I go. How we ask has a big influence on this. So here are some simple forms of asking for what you want, telling somebody what we experience, or here's some simple forms of verbal behavior, excuse me. Let me get back to this. As we are talking about the Mand and asking for what you want, and I said it goes from simple to complex, there's a lot involved. I want to emphasize that the Mand is only one way of talking to other people. Okay? There are other ways which we control our environment. So in one case, I could look over here at my friend David and I could say, chair. And he nods. He said, yeah, that's a chair, of course. Okay? That is not a Mand. Now, in that case, I'm just looking at somebody and telling them what something is. I could do that with the lights up here. Lights. I could do that with my tie. Tie. I could tell people all sorts of things. I could say, if somebody is, opening. Oh, no, sorry. Okay. So, and dropping, yeah. I could tell somebody an action that happened. I could tell somebody about the, I hear Alice Schillingsburg talking next door. I could hear her voice vaguely, and I could tell you that I hear that. So I could label things that are in my environment. Okay? That's another way of talking. In that situation, I'm not getting what I want, right? I'm just telling somebody else. And the reason I do that is because in the case of the chair with David, it allows David to look at the chair, and he knows when I'm saying chair, it's because I'm talking about this thing. It helps the listener know something about their environment, and helps the listener respond more appropriately to the environment. It's a very important skill, and there's a technical word for it. It's called tacting. Okay? You contact something with your senses, you say what it is, and other people respond to you for having done that in some general good way. Things get better for you for doing that. Another thing you can do, another way of verbal behavior, would be repeating something somebody else says. And I'm going to need you to demonstrate this, Carrie. Would you help me? So stand up here. And Carrie is going to say something.
Spaghetti and meat sauce.
Spaghetti and meat sauce. This is mine.
Ham and eggs.
Ham and eggs.
Blue, yellow, green.
Blue, yellow, green. Okay, so I have a thank you, Carrie. I have a skills. She could say anything, and I would repeat back to her what she said. Now, this skill, it seems like when you do it the way I was just doing it, if you have a child who has a tendency to repeat what others said all the time, and that's the only way they talk, it becomes very problematic because it could interfere with them being more flexible in their talking and not being able to say what they see or to ask for what they want, right? Okay? But I would venture to guess that without being able to repeat what other people say, if you didn't have that skill, it would be very hard for you to learn to talk. Remember the example I said when I was little, somebody said chair, and I repeated what they said. So my initial response is to repeat what somebody else said, but eventually I learned to the point to say chair when I see the chair so I could tell David that this is a chair. You with me on that? So that the echoic, and that's what you call this, repeating what somebody says to you is called an echoic. That response becomes very important in our lives. I sort of used this example yesterday where those who, when somebody is talking to you, when you're silently repeating it to yourself, it really helps you remember a lot better. So this echoing is an important skill in so many ways. But there's still one more way I could talk. Aside from asking for what I want, repeating what others say, I could also answer questions. So if Carrie says to me,
"What'd you eat for breakfast?"
"Eggs," I could answer that question. She says something, and then I say something different. She could also do it as like a fill-in.
Row, row, row you are?
Boat. So I could fill in things that Carrie has said to me. It's another way of talking. To be effective talkers and communicators with other people, you need to have all of these skills. You need to be able to ask for what you want. You need to be able to repeat what others say. You need to be able to tell people things that you're experiencing in the environment. And you need to be able to respond to things they tell you to do with words, by answering questions. You need to be able to speak back when somebody speaks to you in ways that are acceptable. You also need to be able to do things like imitate what other people do. So if somebody claps their hands, clapping your hands, raising your hands, that is part of learning too, that relates to language. And I'll show you why in just a little bit. And the other critical skill is sometimes we're not speakers, but we're listeners. Somebody will say something to us and we need to do something. So somebody could say to me, "Sit in the chair," and if Carrie says that,
"Sit in the chair." Great job.
And I didn't speak at all, but I sat in the chair. And then good stuff happened. Carrie said to me, "Great job," as a result of doing that. So there are a lot of different ways we speak. In the real world, these things all occur together. So sometimes I will say, "Wow, it's coffee. Can I have some?" So my statement goes from me saying it's coffee to asking for it. Okay? People may say something to you like, "Hey, what do you do with this thing?" And I have to respond as a listener by looking at it, seeing it's a chair, and then I have to say, "Sit on it." And as I'm answering that question, I'm probably moving like I'm actually going to sit on it and telling somebody what I would do with it. It gets to be complex. Rarely do these things happen in isolation. They all sort of come to work together. So we have speaker skills, and what I just went over is the tact, seeing something, saying what it is. I had intraverbal skills. Somebody talks to me, and I say something different. And echoic skills. Somebody says something to me, and I repeat back what they say. Additionally, I talked about following listener responding. such as following directions. Somebody tells me to sit down, I sit down. There's also another kind of listener behavior I can go into, where in Carrie, you can tell me to get something that's up there. Just
get the glass.
Where out of all this stuff here, I selected what was named. That's another listener skill that needs to be taught. Okay, but I'm not going to focus much on how we teach all of these in this situation. But they will come up later on this morning in some ways in relation to man training. I'm going to focus mostly on the skill of wanting something, saying something, and getting it, which is the idea of a man. Okay, so why do we man the way we do? Well, it has to do with our history. In the presence of water bottle and my motivation to drink, I say to Patrick, water bottle. And he reaches over and hands me the water bottle. Thank you, sir. You know, so, and that didn't happen magically. I had to learn that was a water bottle. I had to, and actually Patrick has taught me this several times already this morning. He'll reinforce me if I ask him for stuff. Okay? So I have learned that he's a listener. I also know to look at him to get his attention before I talk. There are all these things going on that are the result of my past history. And my past history with Patrick is about this long. We just met today, right? It's just a real little time of history. But in that short period, he has taught me a lot. He has taught me that he'll reinforce me. He has taught me that I look at him and I can tell when he's listening to me. I ask him for stuff and he gives it to me. And that's all the result of my experiences in the world. That what happens in our world shapes what we do in the future. Consistently, all the time. We tend not to ask somebody for something who has repeatedly told us no. We'll go to somebody else. Kids learn that pretty quickly, right? Oh, mom won't give me what I want. I think I'm going to go try dad. You know, we're all that way. You know, if we have motivation, if there's something that is valuable to us, we will seek out somebody who's likely to give it to us. We don't go to somebody who is unlikely to provide that to us. And the thing is that kind of learning that interaction is not something that we pay much attention to in our day-to-day lives. Most of us don't spend a lot of time thinking about how we learn to ask people for things. We don't think about it. We just do it. You know, we don't go into a store. Let's say we're looking to buy an adapter in Radio Shack. We don't go into Radio Shack and say, how did I learn that this was an adapter? How did I learn that this tech person is going to help me get we just go and say, hey, do you have an adapter for this thing? It just like comes out easily. And the reason for that is because we have had lots of experience asking for things and getting things we've asked for since the time we were knee-high to a hoppy toad, since we were real little, you know, since we were babies. You know, when you're a baby, what happens is you cry a certain way, and parents quickly learn, oh, that cry means that the baby's hungry. That cry means they need change. That cry means I better hold them. You know, and the way the child vocalizes quickly shapes up how people attend to the baby. And eventually that gets to the point where the child says, Baba, to get bottle. Obi! You know, reaching up. And these things they do in interacting with other people teach them to get what they want when they want it. And it's something that we all learn effortlessly from the time we were born, because it's real important to interact with other people. If we didn't interact with other people and if we weren't able to tell people what we wanted, hardly anything would get done in our lives. You know, it's amazing when you look around this room everything is the result of people talking to each other. The chairs being lined up this way. There are probably people in the room before we got here saying, okay, let's get however many rows here, 20 rows with 10 chairs across to the left and 10 chairs to the right. Let's get the stage back here. Let's get the camera set. And all this detail, people talking to themselves. Well, the chair wouldn't exist unless people talk to each other about building a chair. If somebody hadn't said, hey, can you get me turn the conveyor belt to this speed? We need more of solder for the weld in the chair. If people wouldn't talk, the chair wouldn't be here. The rugs wouldn't be here. This interaction is critical for almost everything we do. The question is, how do we teach somebody to do that? How do we teach somebody who has missed that experience in learning to ask for what they want? And that's what happens with so many children with autism. They have learned that they're able to get things on their own. They have learned to, for whatever reason, early on, they don't attend to people's faces as much. They don't monitor somebody else to see what they're doing. And that will often limit the idea of, will they ask for somebody? Will they ask for something to that person? If you have not had experience where watching somebody's face helps you predict whether they're going to give you something or not, it's going to be very hard to learn the skill of asking for what you want. So asking for things on your own is easier, or asking for things that you want is often easier than getting it yourself, right? That's why we ask other people for it. You know, so if I want somebody to give me water who has water, I say, hey, can I have some water? And it also requires less effort than to try to get it yourself. That's why we ask for things. Okay, if the baby could get the bottle, Baba, on their own, they wouldn't learn to say Baba. They'd probably just go get it. Okay? And but the baby can't go around. And there's another thing that happens. Sometimes we're punished for getting things on our own. And I'm going to go back to my friend Patrick here. Okay? So Patrick has this water bottle sitting here. And if you noticed earlier, I said, water bottle, and he gave me the water bottle, right? If I had reached over and got the water bottle, he would have scowled at me and said, what's this guy doing taking my water bottle? You know, it would have been really awkward and would have resulted in things not working out right. So that asking for things is sometimes easier and less punishing than getting it on your own. So this leads to an area that we also have to consider in relation to teaching children to ask for what they want. We have to be aware that we have to teach a full range of skills related to manding, to asking for what we want. And that range of skills includes asking for things, like the water bottle, the marker, the phone. You want to talk on the phone? Hey, can I have your phone? You know, there are things we ask for. I ask for batteries, I get batteries. Okay? But there are other ways of asking that go beyond that. We can ask for actions, such as I asked Patrick to give me 5. I could say, I wanted Carrie to demonstrate something earlier, and I said, I asked her, stand up. I asked for a specific action. A little kid on the playground, throw it. I say throw it, and the child throws it. You can ask for attention. You know, the little child's, watch, Mommy, I'm climbing. And what they're looking for is the mother to look at them, smile, and say, yeah, look at you go up that ladder. You can demand for information, which is a lot more complicated. For instance, I could say, where did I put my glasses?
In your pocket.
Oh, okay. Oh, they are in my pocket. Good. And what I'm getting there is not my glasses. What Carrie gave me was not my glasses. What she gave me was information that allowed me to behave more effectively. And that's something we often ask for. Hey, did you see this movie last night? We're not asking to see the movie. We're asking somebody to tell us about the movie. which is also another thing we ask for. Sometimes we ask for people to talk more. Hey, can you tell me a little bit more about how the game went last night? What was the pitcher's ERA? You know, we ask for things, information. Okay, we will ask for people to do things with us and so forth. We'll also ask for people to stop something. We'll ask people to remove something. So in the situation where somebody is bringing a box to set down in some area where you don't want it, say, no, don't put it there. That's also a mand. It's a mand to remove something to another area. Don't touch my book. I have it there for a reason. Okay? They're all different ways we ask for things. They're all things that we may want. The things we want are almost infinite. And when we think about it, we really need to teach children who are developing skills related to talking to one another a full range of abilities to ask for lots of different things they want. Now, keep in mind that when I was talking about Carrie, when I said chair, and she looks at the chair, or I guess it was David. I said chair, and David looked at the chair and nodded his head at me. You know, that benefits the speakers. But when we ask for what we want, it directly benefits us. Okay? So the child who learns to say ball to get the ball, getting the ball directly benefits the individual, the person who's asking for it. Of all the different ways we talk, the mand is so important because it gets us directly where we want. And the reason I'm going over all this background information on what the mand is because all of this has to do with how we teach children to ask. We got to know what they want. We also got to know a sequence of skills so we can move the child from first asking for things that are easy to teach to eventually learning to ask for way more complex things, such as asking for the removal of something, asking for somebody to give them information, and so forth. So we have to be able to sequence things. But the big idea here is that this analysis of demand, talking about mands and asking for what we want, if we could make it practical, we are going to have strong tools for helping children learn. Okay, so here are some examples of how mands benefit the speaker. Asking for food and getting it when you're hungry reduces the state of food deprivation. So as you know, we ate breakfast this morning, some of us. If you didn't, or even if you did, as time passes on, you've not had food, food's going to become more valuable to you, and you're going to want to do something to get it. You're going to go out in the hall, start looking around at all those beautiful snacks that are out there. You're going to, maybe if you brought some snacks with you in your bags, you might start reaching in there to get food. You're going to do something to get food. In the situation where you have to sign a form, and you're looking at, oh, I need a pen. You ask for a pen, you get a pen. Thank you. You know, so another way you can ask is, I want to, I have to go visit the science camp down on campus, so I have to get there. Oh, where are my keys?
On the table.
Oh, okay. She says they're on the table. I'm able to go to the table and get them. Saying, oh, really? Oh, yeah? So I'm talking to Jim here, and I'm saying, where are you from, Jim? New Jersey. Wow. Did you drive here? Yeah, what part of New Jersey? Jersey City. Where is it? Oh, okay. Can you tell me a little more? Oh, you do like living? Yeah. It's close to the Delaware Water Gap, right? Not that far. Oh, okay. Well, so some of the things I was saying was just to keep Jim talking to me. And actually, I could keep this conversation. I like hearing about where people live. It's funny. I almost forgot I was presenting on man training because the other thing is Jim was reinforcing me. I talk to him. He talks back. That keeps me talking to somebody. Mands are so powerful for so many different ways, and we use them in so many different ways. So manding in a conversation may serve to keep your partner talking. Pointing to an object may result in the listener looking in that direction, and the listener may end up giving it to you. I was running a training a couple days ago, and somebody started to do something to help me, and I just did this. And just raising my hand was a command for that person to not do that at that time. Or if you notice with Carrie, we can command without necessarily, so I do this, and Carrie dutifully stands up. Thank you, my friend. So that a gesture can also serve as a command, which is interesting because earlier when I defined verbal behavior, I forgot to say something. Most of the time we do something to control a listener in a way that is specific to our culture, as I said. We're using our vocal folds. We're producing sound. But sometimes we can also produce a motion that they see. So when I go like this, that controls Carrie standing up. Why? Because in our culture, this means standing up. In some other culture, it might mean something different. Like I could go through some finger gestures that are probably not appropriate to have archived on the video camera regarding different finger positions that mean different things in different cultures. So the motions we use, sign language is another way of communicating, that you can do everything you can vocally, you can do with sign language. So if I want a pen, I could sign pen. If I want a computer, I could sign computer and get that. I want my glasses, I could ask for glasses. Everything I could do with vocals, I could do with sign language. And there are different cultures for sign language. I don't mean to go off topic too much here, but if you go to Ireland, in Ireland, the sign language for women is different, or was in the past, was different than the sign language for men. It's really a weird thing. Why would you have a different language for women than men? Well, what happened is at about 100 years ago, maybe a little more than that, most children who had congenital deafness were raised in institutions for the deaf, and the women, the girls, were housed in a different facility than the boys, and the language that was taught to them differed. So you had different languages taught to these two groups of individuals. It's not much different than how the Italians speak Italian and English-speaking people speak English. It's all a result of where you live and the culture around you selecting certain things. Here's another important thing about manding that I failed to say. If I don't have those abilities to repeat what other people say, if I haven't learned the names of things, if I can't ask for what I want because those other skills prevented me from learning that, if I can't ask for what I want, what's going to happen is I'm going to learn to get what I want through other methods. So in the situation where I want a pen, the last time I could ask for a pen and get pen from Carrie, but if I can't do that, and Carrie might not know what I want, I might do something else that's effective. I might go, and she may start offering me stuff, okay? She may not know initially that I want a pen because all I said is, and Carrie's going to be, oh, well, I want to shut this guy up. He's yelling in this room. And she'll start giving me all this stuff, and eventually I'll stop when I get the pen. So what sometimes happens is if you can't say what you want, if you can't tell others what you want, you're going to try to tell others what you want in another way. If you can't say it in the accepted way, you're going to try some other way to say it. So often you get problem behavior occurring. You get children who engage in screaming, aggression, temper tantrums, quote-unquote meltdowns to get what they want. What you see up here are just two graphs that show a relationship between a child's rate of aggression and teaching them to ask for what they want. We have seen this pattern repeatedly in classrooms we work in. where we have helped children learn to ask for what they want, and acts of aggression or inappropriate behavior, such as screaming, drops off. Okay? So one of the issues of what makes man training so important is the idea that if you teach the child to ask for what they want, you get a corresponding drop in the rate of aggression. So when we're teaching children, we really need to teach them a full set of ability to ask for what they want, and the issue becomes how best to teach this sequence. Well, the first idea is it's best to teach children to ask for what they want when things are immediately present. When something is immediately present, so that when I want pen, I say pen. And Carrie can teach me how to do that. We're going to get into how to do that. Well, Carrie, demonstrate it real quick. We'll do a little preliminary. I'll come back to this a bunch of times, but it's good to show right up front how we're going to do that. So she checks to see, I want it. You can see I want a pen.
Pen.
She says pen. Now, the reason she said pen for me to say pen is because Carrie knows in advance of starting this training that I can say pen. Okay? She says,
Pen.
pen!
Pen.
And she delivers it, and then I get the pen. Then a little while later, I might want the pen again, and she holds up,
Pen.
pen! Pen!
Pen.
Notice what she did that time. She tried to get rid of the help she gave me to learn to say pen. And there's a formal name for that we use. It's called a within-trial transfer, and I'll explain that in a little bit. But she did a lot of... By the way, I failed to say this. Carrie is like an excellent teacher and is an amazing human being in terms of the way she has helped so many children. She has worked tirelessly. I mean, she said I work tirelessly. She's the one who works tirelessly, really. She has worked to learn these skills to help children ask for what she wants. She did that so fluently right now because she has practiced it. So what she did was she immediately knew I had to be motivated. You can't teach somebody to ask for what they want unless you're sure you want it. So she checked to see if I want it. And you could see that I pretended that my eyes were getting bigger. But children will show that they want something in all sorts of different ways. Then she knew that I could echo. She said pen. And when she said that, I said pen, and she gave it to me. A little while later, she runs the same thing again, and she helps me to learn to say what I want again. She helps me by saying pen, and then I say pen back. But this time, she's going to teach me to say it on my own. All she did was lean in a little bit with the pen closer to me. She didn't take it back. She didn't hold it back here. She moved in a little bit and said pen again. And when I said pen the second time, I got pen. She also did something beautiful there. When she handed it to me, she said, pen! Okay? We'll talk quite a bit about that in a minute. Okay, so here are some different ways we can teach Mands in the order we can teach them in. We can Mands for items with different ways of teaching Mands, excuse me. So we can teach children to ask for what they want by them using words. But let's say I couldn't echo what she said. She might have to teach me sign language to ask for what I want. If, after having tried to use sign language for a while, I wasn't learning, she might try to teach me to ask on a device where I push a button to get what I want. Okay? So there's a whole range of skills related to how you can ask for what you want. You might ask for items that are not present. You might ask for attention, and so forth. Let's watch a video here of different kinds of Mands. I'll tell you what, I didn't download this video here, so we will instead, what I just showed was the basic principles of how you do Mand training. Let me show a video that will introduce the steps in teaching the Mand.
I'm Amir communication, in which the behavior of the speaker specifies the item or event that is to serve as a reinforcer.
What's the builder?
The builder.
Through MAN training, students are taught to use effective communication to ask for what they want.
Lie.
They learn to use different words to access different items or activities. Autism is defined by qualitative differences in social skills, qualitative differences in communication skills, as well as repetitive stereotype behaviors. MAN training helps address all three characteristics of autism. By teaching students to ask for what they want, we address social skills because it increases approaches and social initiations. By learning a wide variety of Mands, students learn flexibility. They can access a wide range of reinforcers, which results in reduced repetitive stereotype behaviors. In order to teach the Mand, teachers need to identify what the student preferences are, set up situations where opportunities will occur to teach it, and then know how they will prompt those Mands and how they will fade those prompts so that the students can eventually Mand independently. In this training, we will provide a format for understanding motivation, procedures for teachers to learn how to establish themselves as valuable sources of reinforcement, procedures to prompt and fade prompts to establish an independent MAN repertoire, as well as procedures for addressing problems that may arise during MAN training. We know that teaching a student to ask for what they want is one of the most important skills you can teach. We hope this information is helpful to you, and thank you for watching.
Almost all the videos I'm going to show, not all of them, are available on the patent website. So you can access those by going to www.patent.net, clicking on videos, and then off to the left there'll be a drop-down menu, and there's a link there for autism, and then there are about 6 pages of videos. There's at least 10 or 12 videos on MAN training. And we're going to be adding more videos in the course of this year that will show actually working with some of the earliest learners who need to acquire Mands. So those basic procedures are what we're going to be covering. We keep in mind that one of the first things we need to know is, how do we know when to ask? Okay, well, we know when to ask for several reasons. First of all, there's motivation. We want something, and then we see that a speaker is available. So one of the earliest steps in teaching MAN training is teaching a child to go up to somebody who's going to be a listener and provide the reinforcement for MAN training. That is not as easy a task as you think, and sometimes people skip that step and move too quickly. You have to establish that the other person who is going to be the listener is going to be the source of getting things. So the two things need to be in place. There needs to be motivation, you need to want something, and you also need to have a listener available. These are important considerations that I'll be going over in a minute and showing how to do that. But there was another example I used in my conversation with Jim, that conversations involve manding. That in the situation where somebody says, "What did you do last night?" That's a mand for information. The second person says, "I went with my son to see that new fantasy film. Was it good?" So there's another mand. "I liked it, but my son found certain parts a bit scary." Really? Like, tell me more. What did he find scary? Yes, some of the dark magic stuff was too much, but he did like the flying wizards. Oh, I haven't seen the movie yet, so there's no man there. But here there is. "Oh, I think you should go. You seem to like that kind of stuff." So there's a man there. When you think of conversations, conversations involve a lot of manding, asking somebody to say something back to you. It's important. Okay, so I already covered this. Sometimes we gesture, sometimes we use sign language, sometimes we talk. How we respond is important. Okay? If you're not able to echo something, if the child you are concerned about is not able to repeat what somebody else says, then you're going to have to use some kind of alternative method. You can't prompt the vocal musculature. If I want Carrie to ask for the advancer, and I say to her advancer, and she can't repeat advancer back to me, advancer, she said, "Nyeh, nyeh." That was pretty good. So, "Nyeh, nyeh." Can't do it. So how am I going to get her to say advancer? Well, I can't get in her face and start pulling her jaw and grabbing her tongue and that doesn't work. You can't physically prompt somebody to repeat what you said. So I could say, okay, well, I got to teach her to say advancer. So I might do something like answer, answer,
Answer.
bancer,
Bancer.
answer,
Answer.
advancer.
Advancer.
To teach somebody to do that, advancer.
Advancer.
And I might go and shape those skills very systematically under the guidance of a speech and language therapist, of course, somebody who can really break it down. Whether I did it the right way there or not, I'm not sure. Fairly close, I think ballpark. But for me to do that with somebody who goes, it's going to take me months to do what I just shaped and carry in a few minutes there. That process would take a long, long time to teach that vocal echoic. And she wants the advancer right now. So I'm going to have to do something to get her to learn to ask for that. I'm probably going to go with sign language, and I'll explain why a little bit later. Sign language has some real advances. It's a little harder to teach at first, I will say that. To establish the first few signs are going to be a little bit harder than selecting pictures or pressing buttons. But it has a bigger payoff in a lot of ways. So I wanted to say advancer, so she wants the advancer, and I could say advancer.
Advancer.
Advancer, you got it. She learned the echoic there too, yeah? But I could teach the sign by physically prompting it, where I can't physically prompt the vocal response. So, the person asking for something must have a listener. The individual must be able to go up to somebody and ask for what they want. This is a critical skill, as I started to talk about a little while ago. If I want Carrie to start asking me for stuff, the very first thing she has to learn is that she has to come to me to get it. Okay? How do I do that? Well, what I've seen done erroneously in some man training sessions would be things like this. I have a koosh ball, and I have the koosh ball here, and the person, and Carrie wants it. Koosh ball! Say koosh ball! You got to say it. I'm not going to give it to her until she says it. She's got to learn to ask for it. Say koosh ball! Say koosh ball! Not going to work. That will not work. Because all you are doing is setting yourself up as an impediment to get this, when if I left it there, she would just go get it on her own. So she's going to wait until sometime when I don't have it in my hands. She's going to go grab it on her own, and she's not going to learn to ask for it. What I want to do is just make myself part of it. Koosh ball. Here, koosh ball. Here comes koosh ball. You know, and all I'm doing that, and I might just stand here like this then. Oh, koosh ball! And all I'm doing is pairing myself with whatever the child wanted. Now I'm going to make them want it first, and this is starting at the earliest level. By the way, you can do this with older kids too. Let's say Carrie really likes watching Taylor Swift videos, okay? And I have the Taylor Swift video playing on Taylor Swift, check it out. Yeah. Oh, Taylor Swift, yeah, man, oh, look at this. Taylor Swift.
Taylor Swift.
Taylor Swift. Okay? So I could do that with older students too, with a more age-appropriate kind of reinforcer, something that's not going to have them stand out as much. But with young kids, the whole idea I'm getting at here is the first thing you got to do is the adult has got to learn to control the reinforcer. If the child can get it on their own, they don't need you. They're going to get it on their own. Okay? So somehow I've got to control the reinforcer, but that isn't enough. Not only do you have to control the reinforcer, but I've got to somehow make it easy for Carrie to get. Easier to get coming through me than getting it on her own. I have to teach her that I am a source of good things. Okay? And I'm going to do that not only with the koosh ball, but I may also do it with the Jacob's ladder, which I never know how to use these things, but so I have it here. Jacob's ladder. Here it is. Oh, look at this. Wow, Jacob's ladder. Yeah, Jacob's ladder. And I'm going to control it, and I'm going to have control of the reinforcer, and I'm going to make it easy for her. The whole time I'm presenting it, I'm saying what it is. Jacob's ladder. I'm saying the name of the item often while I'm playing with it. Why am I doing that? Because I want her to learn that in getting Jacob's ladder, she's going to have to say it. She likes doing this already. Hearing the word Jacob's ladder goes along with seeing this. I'm going to use a technical term here. It's called conditioning. The sound of hearing Jacob's ladder goes along with the condition under which she's getting to play with this cool thing. So the koosh ball, having the koosh ball, hearing koosh ball in the presence of koosh ball conditions that sound as something that's valuable and may make it more likely that she's going to want to repeat that on her own. There is a leader in the field of behavior analysis who has helped us so much with this simple idea. He calls it parity. And the idea is if you hear somebody say something and it sounds right, you're going to be likely to say it to yourself again, because when it sounds right, it's going to produce a little bit of the effect that hearing it in the condition you first heard it in would produce. So let me give you an example. What I just said might have been a little too detailed. But in the situation where you have like a 18 to 20-month-old child, and you're downstairs playing with them, and you might be doing something with the playing with a toy frog. Here comes the frog. Ribbit, 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 it's going to get you. And the frog gets you. Oh, now here, the frog's going in the water. And you as a parent, you're thinking like, oh my gosh, the kid's not saying something. Their mouth may be moving a little bit. They're not saying anything. You say, oh my gosh, the kid doesn't talk. And then, this is a little bit later, and you put the child to bed, and you have your little monitor on in the room, and you hear the child up in bed. Whibbit, whibbit, fog and wawa, whibbit, whibbit. Okay? And what the child is doing is they're repeating what they heard in a situation was a lot of fun, and they're producing the same sounds because it sort of reminds them of how good it was back when they did it earlier. And it's best when they say it more like what they heard before. I mean, I think we've all sort of experienced that with little children. There's one of our consultants who we work with who was teaching her child to count from 10 to 20. It was 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. And her daughter would go, 14, 19, 17. She'd get it. And she actually, I wish I had the recording here because it's really cool. She has a recording of her daughter up in bed, laying there in bed, repeating it. And eventually you hear the daughter go, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. Mommy, I did it! It's really cute. But, that's how we learn to say things to us that other people say through that conditioning, that pairing. And in order to Mands for somebody, we have to condition other people as sources of good stuff. And the technical term for good stuff is reinforcement. Reinforcement is a consequence that increases the future probability of doing something. So when we do something, things get better for us, we're more likely to do that thing in the future. So that if I'm holding up the Jacob's ladder and dangling, and Carrie comes up to me and gets it, she's going to be more likely to come to me, Jacob's ladder, in the future. it's going to shape up that approach behavior. That is a critical first part of getting the Mand in place, getting that approach behavior. So children with autism spectrum disorders have to be taught that. They frequently, for a variety of reasons, won't learn to attend to people's faces. They tend not to be easily reinforced by other people. So we have to figure out, how do we get things under control so that we can deliver good stuff to them, so they learn that it's better to come through us to get what they want than to get it on their own. Notice that all I'm doing at this point is not getting the child to ask for what they want yet. All I'm teaching them is that critical first step. You have to have a listener. Okay? Let me see if I have a picture of a video of this. Let's see if this, oh, here we go. And here's Carrie in action here. So here, let me set this up. Carrie is playing with Desi on the swing. What? Oh, how'd that happen? What's up there now? Okay. Laura, are you in the back there? Carrie, can you give a buzz for some tech help here? It's working fine on my screen. But I might be able to get it here. Let's see. Okay, good. I got it. Okay. Carrie, I'm okay. I think I got it here. Okay, so let's take 2 here. Sorry about that, folks.
There you go. There you go. There you go. Wow. Wow. Do you feel that?
So what you see here is Carrie is playing with him, and this is
I'm
really
at
a
the
beautiful
window.
little scene here.
I'm at the window. Oh, look at that.
So what's going on here is Carrie knows that Desmond has a history of going to the window to watch children playing outside of the playground. Now what had happened before is she was pairing herself with reinforcement, good stuff's on the swing. She also has that ball there, and she has, Desmond goes to the ball. And what happens is, even though Carrie is trying diligently to get him to come up to her at the window, there's no motivation. The window isn't as good as the ball. So let's watch what Carrie artfully does here to alter things.
We can see the slide. We can see the slide out there.
She keeps trying.
Boy, do you want to bounce on the ball? Do you want to bounce on the ball?
Notice what she does now is, okay, well, I'm not going to get him to come to the window. He's on the ball. How can I pair myself? How can I become part of this fun activity? So she goes up and she has him bouncing on the ball with her. And then...
I see that ball. Oh, I see it. You are bouncing.
she pairs the response. She's saying bouncing a lot because eventually he's going to ask for bouncing with sign language. She takes the ball and...
Oh, boy. There you go. Nice job coming over. Let's bounce.
And what you see is she controls the reinforcer. She didn't rip it away and say, you can't have the ball. She just, oh, let's go get it and move it over here. And like a magnet, he follows her. That's what we need to establish. Before we can teach a child to ask for something, we have to get to the position where we are pairing ourselves effectively with things they want in order to get that approach behavior. And the way we do that is by identifying things that the student wants and pairing that with, with delivery, making it easy for the child to get.
Bounce, bounce, bounce. Bounce, bounce, bounce. Bounce, 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 bounce.
Here she goes. She knows it works. She does it again.
Wow! Whoa, there we go. There we go. There we go.
And there's a little bit of problem behavior. She deals with that pretty quickly.
Bounce. Bounce, 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 bounce. Stand up.
Yeah, I'll follow you to get that ball. The swing might be okay, but I'm going to go with you because you're a lot of fun. Carrie, being the astute observer that she is.
Good job. Stand up. Come with me.
Now she has him follow. And why would he follow her over there? Because she has become a source of good things.
Nice job coming over.
Carrie has taught Desmond that when she's around, she delivers good things. And it teaches Desmond to come up to her. If you don't get that approach behavior, you're not going to be able to teach the child to ask for what they want. And it's a much more important consideration than what we sometimes attend to. That we think, oh, we got to teach the child to talk. But if the child hasn't learned that other people are a source of good stuff, you're not going to get that behavior established. So when we ask for things we want, we often get them. But what does it mean to want something? I sort of suggested this earlier, that motivation is not something within the child, it's something that's in the environment around us. And I said that that was an optimistic thing. So wanting something in our lives doesn't seem to remain constant, right? Like at one point I may need to drive somewhere, and my keys for the car are important. Another point, I may want to check a message. My wife might be texting me from home, so I want to see what she said. So the location of my phone becomes important. I'm talking to you, and all of a sudden I want to change the slide, so the advancer becomes important. Another point, I may need to find somebody. There might be some session I need to help somebody with. So I say, hey, Carrie, have you seen Willow? And she'll help me with that. So what we want changes over time with circumstances, right? As the world changes, what we want changes. And how much we want something seems to vary with experiences. So motivation is simply a fancy word for saying wanting it. But if we look at motivation, wanting it, the problem with saying wanting it is that it seems to put it inside the child's head. And yes, certainly there are things that go on in our neurology that changes whether we want something. I'm not denying that at all. But none of us could do anything about that stuff. I've never seen a teacher with an fMRI machine or electrodes in their classroom. I've yet to see it. You can't change the child's brain. All we can do is change the world around them, which, by the way, is a very good thing. It's very optimistic. It's very optimistic because the things we could do something about allows us to do something about it and to change things for the better. Teaching a child to ask for what they want is definitely changing the world for the better. It's going to lead to greater independence. It's going to open the door for the child learning to talk about a lot of different things. Okay? So if we look at wanting something as an environmental value, and we figure out how to change the environment to get somebody to want something, we're well on our way to teaching a child to ask for what they want. The question is, how do we alter the environment? Let me go through a couple basic ways. One way we can establish motivation, we can help the child to want something, is by a sort of basic procedure which is called deprivation. So deprivation sort of works like this. And if anybody was at my session yesterday, I apologize for being repetitious on this example, but it's a very clear example. In the condition where you start exercising, where you start running, and maybe you're running out in the heat here today, and it's humid and it's hot and you're sweating and you're panting and you're running. The panting, you're exhaling air from your lungs, which has a lot of water vapor in it. You're sweating, so you're losing water through your pores. Your muscles are burning up water as part of your metabolic function. So you're basically becoming deprived of water. That is a manipulation that alters the value of getting water. Water becomes valuable to you after exercising like that, right? And what do? You go to the fountain, you get a drink, you open the refrigerator, get water out of the refrigerator, you ask somebody, hey, could I have a drink of water? You do anything that'll get you water. Motivation has that effect. Motivation has two effects. It increases the value of something, and it leads to you doing something to get it. Okay? So in the situation for something like water, when you're deprived of it, it'll become valuable to you and you'll do something to get it. So, what time is it? 10:25, okay. So that getting water becomes valuable when you've been deprived of water. You also have a situation in which hunger occurs. It's now 10:25 and we haven't eaten since we came in here at 8 o'clock. And as a result, when you're hungry, you're likely to do something to get food. Food becomes valuable, you'll start seeking it out, and then you'll do something to get it. Okay? Those are two important kinds of motive. That's one important way in which motivation works. Being deprived of something that you need for survival makes it valuable. Doing something that, another example would be air. If you don't have air, you're going to do something to get air right away, right? It becomes valuable and you're going to do something. Like if your head's underwater and you've been swimming underwater for a while, all of a sudden it's valuable to stick your head out of water to get the air. Okay? So since we're all food deprived right now, why don't we take about a 15-minute break and we'll come back after the break. So I'll see you in at 15. What time is it, Carrie? 10:23. So we'll come back at about 20 of 11. The motivation we were talking about, are you guys ready? Okay. We were talking about motivation, and we said that motivation can be affected by deprivation, that not having enough of something can cause you to want that thing. Let me show you a video of deprivation in action. Here we go. So, in the condition where one is deprived of oxygen, getting oxygen becomes valuable and will lead even a dodo like me to take his head out of water to get air. Okay? Let me show you another video of deprivation.
May I please have some water?
Sure you can, Ben. Here you go.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So in the condition where one is eating lots of salty food leaches water from the body, leading to one being thirsty. When one is thirsty, one is more likely to ask for water. So motivation can also work another way. And don't worry about these slides. I'm not going to use the technical terms at all here. In most cases, the things we want to ask for are not the results of deprivation. They're not because we're deprived of food or deprived of air. And as a matter of fact, in most of our lives, there's not many opportunities to systematically deprive somebody of something to get what they want, especially things needed for survival. But I use those examples just to show how motivation is the effect of things that happen in the environment. Now, motivation for other things also lies in the environment, other things that don't necessarily have to do with survival. And I'll try to give a number of examples. In the situation where I want to advance the slide, and I realize that I don't have the advancer with me. So the situation is such, I have learned the value of moving the slides. That's something I've established already through having to talk to people and show them stuff that I'm talking about on the screen. So that the situation in which I have to advance the slide and I don't have the advancer, that change in conditions all of a sudden makes the slide advancer more valuable. Okay, getting that is more valuable. Now I'm motivated to get it. I want the slide advancer because of these changes. So what do? I will do any number of things to get it. I start looking for it. I might ask Carrie, slide advancer. She doesn't have it, so I can't get reinforced that way. So I look over here. Oh, here it is. And I look for it. It'll evoke any behavior that's associated with getting the slide advancer. Let me show you an example of this kind of motivation in a classroom type setting. Here is a circumstance in which there is a change in conditions that establishes the value. Let me see, where is this? Right here. Okay, here's the situation. Ben, the little boy, wants bubbles. Linda hands him a bottle of bubbles. So his history has been, oh, that bottle of bubbles has that soapy water, and I blow bubbles, and it's a heck of a lot of fun. He knows that. That's all learned and established. But there's going to be a change in conditions that occur. Something that is going to happen that establishes something else as valuable. Let's see what the change in condition is. Right there. A change in condition. The lid is too tight. And the lid is on. That changes the value of getting the lid off. So what has happened here? The teacher has taught him, or has manipulated circumstances so that now this change in conditions of having the bubbles, which is already valuable, all of a sudden changes the value of getting the lid off. Okay, so what does that do? When something is valuable, you do something to make it happen. And he'll do anything to get that lid off. First he tries squeezing it out. If he had a spoon, he might have taken a spoon and tapped on the lid to loosen it up. He might have got one of those rubbery things. Or he might do what he did there, which is manned. Open! And he uses a man to get what he wants. And that's successful in getting the lid off. Now he can get back to blowing bubbles. So that kind of motivation occurs for so many different things in our day-to-day life. There are times where we will mand for things that we want to complete some task. If you're at the breakfast table and you're getting ready to eat, and you look down and you don't have a fork, having the food and the plate and everything there, and no fork, alters the motivation. It leads you to want a fork, right? And what do you do when you want a fork? First thing you do, look around, see if it's there. If that doesn't work, Excuse me, may I have a fork? You manned for a fork. Okay? The idea is that wanting those kind of things like the bubbles off, wanting the fork in the restaurant, wanting a pen when you need to write, all those things aren't something you're carrying around in your head. It's not a matter of deprivation. What it is a change in conditions all of a sudden makes you want something. Yesterday, how many here were at the session I did yesterday? Okay, good. Well, a lot of you then, I'm sorry for repeating this example, but I'll say what happened. There was a woman, her name was Kristen, I think. And I went to Kristen and I said, what do you like? And she eventually told me that money would work. And I think I offered her thousands of dollars. And I gave her a notepad, much like this, a notepad with these two little red lines. And I said, hey, thousands of dollars. All you have to do is cut on those, in between those two little red lines without hitting any line. You cut on that from the bottom of the page to the middle of the page, you get thousands of dollars. What do you think she said right away? Scissors. So, and scissors, she wasn't sitting there thinking, oh, I want scissors before this. It wasn't in her head. The change in conditions altered the value of getting scissors and led her to say right away, scissors. So if I want to teach a child to ask for scissors when they want scissors, I've got to manipulate the motivation. So the teacher in that situation could teach Ben to ask for open by manipulating the circumstances. Motivation is all about teachers artfully manipulating the situations. Giving the child a ball, but no bat when the child likes to play baseball. Giving the child, telling the child to open the door, but making sure the door is really tight so the child needs to ask for open. Teaching the child to, giving the child one shoe and telling them to put on their shoes will lead them to ask for another shoe. Okay? You can manipulate situations in all sorts of ways, including learned things like the koosh ball. Okay? I can manipulate motivation for the koosh ball by presenting it and not doing anything with it. That establishes the value of me like bopping her with the koosh ball. My hand's coming up to do this. I'm going to torture you here, Carrie. Okay. Coming up like this might establish the value of me doing something goofy like egg. So if I sit there like this, she may say, egg, egg, to get it. Okay? You'd be surprised how many kids love getting eggs. Okay? The idea here is we want to manipulate motivation because you can't ask for something without having motivation. You can't do man training unless the child wants something. What I've seen too many times is that a teacher will say, okay, I'm going to teach manding. It's time for me to teach the child to ask for what they want. And they take all this stuff and they put it out in front of the child on the desk. They have all this stuff there and they do something like this. Bug, bug. Elf, elf, and just goes through the motions. You've got to establish motivation. If the child doesn't want it, you're not doing man training. It looks like a man. She says elf, and I give it to her. But she's just doing that just to get me to stop her, to stop asking her to say the names of these things. It's not really a man. So when we do man training, you can't rush it. You've got to build motivation. Now, the other thing is that it seems like what I'm suggesting here is that you only teach Mands for contrived things that are going to be so much fun. And you do have to do that to get the child to learn how to ask for things. That's an important first step. First, you get the child to approach you. You pair yourself with reinforcement. Next step is you're going to be really clear in modeling what you're delivering. You're going to be saying the name as you deliver it. The next step is to begin prompting the Mand and fading the Mand. But then you also have to start teaching the child. Once they've learned to ask for lots of different things, You also have to be concerned with making sure the child learns to ask for what they want in the right circumstance. Like, it would be really weird right now if I asked for something like, got a pomegranate? I mean, that would be weird. There's no reason why pomegranates would be available. There's no reason why anybody in this room would have a pomegranate. We have to teach children to ask under the right circumstances. When you need to go outside and you're missing one of your shoes, that's the time to ask for shoes. When you're trying to get through a door that's closed and you can't open it, that's the time to ask for open. Okay, we have to set situations up throughout the natural environment throughout the day where we're going to provide lots of opportunities to ask for what you want at times when you would normally ask for them, not in a contrived situation. Okay. So teaching children to ask for what they want at the right time is important. You want to make it easy at first. You want to have the teacher control the reinforcers. You want to teach the child that that there is value in approaching adults and asking for what they want. And the time to go to others is when you really want something and the circumstances are right. Okay. So these are all critical considerations. How can the adult teach a child to ask for what they want if the adult doesn't know what the child wants? I'm sure parents ask this question a lot. I don't know what they want. They want something and I have no idea. Well, sometimes in the immediate situation, there's not much you can do about it. So one of the first steps in teaching the Mand is to start taking control of things the child wants. And when you're in control, teaching the child to ask for that thing, as long as you set up the situation where the child wants it. This way, you could present stuff, teach the child to ask for it, and you'll know they want it because you've presented it, and the child has done something. So if I'm assessing whether Carrie wants something, I might have the chicken here, and I wind it up, and the chicken starts dancing, and there you go, Carrie wants it. Now, if I have a response form such as chicken, that I could teach her, chicken, here comes the chicken, whoa, chicken, and I could fade my prompts. I could prompt her with a physical prompt to emit the sign for chicken, and then I can fade my prompt. I know she wants it because I've tested it. Here's the trick. What I'm going to do is I'm going to teach Carrie to Mand for the chicken. I'm going to teach her to Mand for the ball. Ball! Here comes, woo! Ball! I'm going to shape up asking for the ball, for the chicken. I'm going to teach lots of things so that when I present it under that condition, I'm going to check to see if she wants it. If she wants it, I could then teach her to ask for it and then reinforce. In other words, deliver the direct reinforcement, the consequence, giving her what she wants. That is such a important consideration in adults learning to know what the child wants. We have to control the reinforcers in order to get that. What will eventually happen is if I teach a sufficient number of Mands, if I teach the child, here's what so often happens that is really a problem. You'll teach one or two Mands to a child, and the child will then, the child can ask for what they want. People will start teaching the child to say, I want ball, please. Or if it's just vocal, I want ball, please, because we think that there's this progression of language where the more words you say, the more effective you are. Which there are certain times where you're out when you're hanging out with somebody, and too many words is just the opposite of what you want from a person, and adding extra words doesn't mean you're more effective. It does not mean you're more effective. If I want the ball and I say ball and I get the ball, that's pretty effective. Okay? But It's no more effective, by the way, than my saying, I want ball, please. It's no more effective. They both work. It's also, we sometimes add those words because we want the child to say more words, okay? The other reason we say that is we want our child to be polite. But bear with me here. Which is more polite? Ball? Is that more polite than, I want ball, please? Saying please and saying more words doesn't necessarily make it more polite. It's the tone that carries the politeness. Okay? And I would much rather somebody come up and say, ball. The tone in itself is polite. Somebody saying, I want ball, please. And just adding extra words, all those extra words doesn't really mean the child knows what I want is. The reason we say I want is to tell somebody the reason I'm saying ball is because I'm manding for it. That's all the I want means. Okay? What the point I'm getting at here is if you want it to know what the child wants when they want it, you've got to teach them to demand for lots of different things. Broadening the demand repertoire is more important than just adding extra words. The other thing is, why do we say I want? To tell the person that we're manding rather than doing something else. But the way we mand can be very different. How I can control Carrie to respond to my mands. Sometimes I could say, ball. I really needed to tell you about this ball. So I say it a little more forcefully. I can also say, can I have the ball, please? It could be like I'm saying, give me the ball, but don't punish me for asking. Okay? The way we say it can carefully control the listener so that can I have, please, is very different than I want, or give it to me now. So teaching the child to say I want with every mand is just teaching robotic skills. And I come from a position where I don't ever want to teach a child anything that's rote and robotic. I want it under the right control. I want the child to ask for ball with the right inflection relative to their motivation. That is really hard to teach, and if we teach that too early, if we start adding on these extra words too early, what we're going to get is simply rote expressions, where the child, and eventually the child will do things like this, which is really, ask me, what is it?
What is it?
I want ball. They'll just add the words onto anything because the I want has not been established as something that's really controlling the listener carefully. So we don't want to introduce more words too early. Actually, when I do get to the point where I'm teaching a child to use 2 or 3 words, I'm going to make sure it's relevant. So I'm going to have something like the red pen, the marker, or let's call it a gray pen. The gray pen, the red pen, and the purple pen, and they all have different color inks in, and she's coloring, and she wants a pen, and what she's going to say is...
Purple pen.
I'm going to teach her to ask for the purple pen because both words control a specific motivation, that she wants this pen versus the other 2. So if she can't do that, I might prompt her, purple pen.
Purple pen.
And I'm probably not going to teach that until I have taught her that this is a pen, this is a pen, this is a pen, this is a red pen, this is a purple pen, this is a gray pen. I'm going to teach her all those different things first before I expand utterance. Because otherwise, I'm just going to get rote responding. And we never want to teach kids to do stuff simply because we want them to do it. We want them to teach children to do things so they can use it. That's why we're much better off getting the child to ask for lots and lots and lots of things with single words. That will lead to much more effective social communication than having the child just say a bunch of words that don't really affect the listener, in other words, that are just things that we want the child to do because we want to be proud of our child for saying multiple words. Second of all, another thing that happens with that is frequently the child will start to add words on without being taught. Remember what I talked about earlier? When it sounds right, we tend to use those words. So if Carrie's a child in this case, and I'm wondering, hey, Carrie, can I have the pen? And I'm modeling different ways of saying it. Give me the phone. And I'm modeling all these things. Eventually, the child is going to interacting with other people, hearing that is going to lead to them learning how to say that. So when we're talking to children, we should model what we want them to say later on. It's an important part of language training. So in order to figure out how to teach the child to, in order to figure out what the child wants in a particular situation, we have to teach them to Mands for lots of different things. The other thing we need to do is observe the child. Something else, when you're first teaching in the natural environment, the child will tell you what they want by looking where they want a lot of times, by what they're going for. Carrie, in several of the videos we have of her working with the little boy you saw earlier, she learned that if he looks towards something, he likely does that. So she'll be doing bounce, bounce. He looks at the swing, and she says, okay, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to get him to the swing now. So I bounce. She picks up the ball, walks over the swing, and says, come here. And he comes running over to the swing. So watching the child, watching what they do will tell you what they want. And then you can observe and capture that. You can capture motivation. One way you can capture motivation is by teaching Mands for food at a situation like snack. Snack time is when the child is naturally hungry, and you can teach the child to Mands for the different things they want to eat at that time. You can teach the child to ask for their coat before going out to play. All you're doing is taking advantage of changes in circumstances that occur as a natural part of routines in order to get the child to ask for those things. Asking for crayons when they're drawing. Asking for the child to, teaching the child to ask for the remote when they want to change channels. You can also contrive motivation. And you can do things like the bubble example, where the teacher deliberately screwed on that lid too tight before she gave the bubbles. You can give the child a dollhouse with no furniture. And all of a sudden that establishes the furniture as being valuable. You can put the favorite toy high up on a shelf and be ready to get it down as soon as the child sees that it's there. You can give a bit of a favorite snack, and then you can give a little bit of a snack to the child that eats that. Getting a little bit may want them to have more. So you can contrive motivation for the next bite by limiting how much you give. So Mand training may be easy, and it is also complex, especially when you're teaching more complex Mands, like I suggested earlier, getting a child to ask for information. And I'll cover that. Actually, I'm not going to get into how to teach information in this training. That would take too long. What I'd advise you to do, if you're interested in that, this afternoon, David Ross, one of our consultants, will be doing a very thorough explanation of how to teach Mands for information. What I'm trying to get at is the basics in this form. And here in this training, here are the basics of Mand training. You know, you're going to identify strong motivators. You're going to make sure that the child wants it at the time you're teaching it. Then you're going to select the response form. If the child can echo what you say, you're going to teach them to say it vocally. If the child is willing to let you touch them and you can teach imitation, then you're going to probably teach sign language. If you have tried sign language, you might have to, and it hasn't worked, you might have to go to a selection-based system such as picture exchange or picking items on a augmentative device. Then you're going to teach when the motivation for that item is actually strong in the moment. When the child wants it, you're going to then prompt them to ask for it, as I've modeled already. And once the child prompts, you're going to fade those prompts as possible. The whole time modeling what we want the child to learn to say. And you're going to teach the appropriate sequence of skills, and then you're going to use database programming. So identifying reinforcers. Here's some hints. You want to pick reinforcers that you can use that are easily controlled by the adult. So I'm not going to teach Carrie to ask for swimming. Why? Because I can only deliver it one time a day. And for her, when she signs swimming, it's going to take me a half hour to get her ready to go swimming. Okay? But I'm going to start by asking her Mands for ball, because I could control the ball. It's right here. I could deliver it quickly. which is another thing. I could deliver it quickly. I could provide lots of opportunities to ask, thank you, Carrie, to ask for the ball. I'm also going to do stuff in terms of man training, like making sure that I'm only using a small amount of whatever it is, because that will keep the child motivated to get that thing. Let me talk about food reinforcers a little bit, because often for many children, you have to start using something that is very, very valuable to them to teach demand. And sometimes food is your strongest reinforcer. It's the strongest consequence you can get for demand. This has several issues that need to be attended to. Number one, we want to be concerned about nutrition. Okay, I didn't show this yesterday. I had prepared for the opening yesterday morning with the research updates that obesity is an issue in children with autism. There's a slightly high, not in all children, but with autism, but in many. I think it's probably correlated with lots of high-calorie foods and sometimes children with autism not engaging in a lot of activity. The point I'm getting at here is that if you're going to use food, make sure you're concerned about calories and how much food you're using. Number two is that you always want to use only a very small bit of food if you're using it at all. Number three, you want to and actually this might be number one, is you want to consider, is the use of food ethical in this situation? Okay, and what leads to food being an ethical reinforcer is the idea is the use of a couple extra calories is the benefit of doing that going to outweigh the risks of having those calories? Meaning that if it takes food to teach a child to learn to talk, is that going to have a much bigger impact and outweigh any momentary problem with using food? Okay, and I think it often will for students who are first learning to talk, especially if you're using food as a reinforcer in the way I'm suggesting. Because what will happen is a few extra calories isn't going to matter that much. The child not being able to engage in appropriate interactions with others will matter. Okay? And I mean, if anything predicts success in life, what we know solidly is that those who are better at verbal skills are more independent, have a greater chance of better incomes, and generally have better social relations. So that anything we can do to improve language even a little bit is going to have huge payoffs, both in terms of quality of life and all of our economic conditions. So that using food sometimes is the ethical thing to do because it outweighs a much longer-term problem of the child not knowing how to talk. But if you use food, you're going to use very, very small amounts. You're going to try to use raisins rather than M&Ms. Okay? You're going to make sure that you're using a small amount of food at any one time. So that when I use a food reinforcer, I usually have like a sewing box with lots of different kinds of little foods in there to make sure I'm varying the kind of food I'm delivering. And I have them cut up. I'll use like pill cutters and other things to make sure the smallest amount. What that does is that helps make sure the child doesn't get tired of any one food. It helps me control how much I give at any one time. And it also makes sure that I'm not delivering too many calories. Okay? Like sometimes people will say, oh, we should never use food with kids. And I have like potato chips cut into small, so like 4 potato chips last the whole morning, and gets the child to do all kinds of things to ask for a potato chip. Getting the kid to ask for it. And I use 4 potato chips the whole morning, broken up into small pieces. Then the kid goes home, and what do they get? A big bag of potato chips. What sense does it make? I mean, I'm not, now, by the way, if you can get away without using food, that's a good thing, okay? But I am suggesting that there are times where the ethical benefits of using food far outweigh the risk, particularly if you're following guidelines. For those who are educators, if you're using food, I would also suggest strongly get it on the IEP. Okay, that's an important consideration. Okay, so other things about Best reinforcers, only a short amount of contact or are consumable. Make sure that the response needed to ask for whatever they're going to ask for is easy enough for the child to emit. So using the sign for potato is a lot easier than doing potato chip, to do a multiple part sign. Saying pen might be easier than saying a longer word. Notepad. Notepad might be too long for a child. So you want to pick things that are easy to say. So it could be that instead of teaching ladybug, if the child can just say bug, I'm going to start with bug rather than go into all of ladybug. And the other thing you want to consider is you're going to teach things at first that are usually liked by the child. All of these are steps in identifying the first things you're going to be teaching to a child. And then you also want to make sure that whatever you're using with the child remains strong, that remains motivating. How do we make sure that things remain motivating? Well, what we need to do is vary the things we use. So we want to teach always more than one mand at any one time. So we're going between the ladybug, the Jacob's ladder, the koosh ball. We're going between those things. The egg, getting food. We're going to vary the type of reinforcers. So we're going to teach several mands at one time. Then we're only going to deliver them for a short period of time. We're not going to deliver too much. The other thing is you want to stop using a reinforcer before it loses its value. There's a little guy I was working with out in the Pittsburgh area a couple years ago, I guess by now. It feels like it was just yesterday. I'm thinking time has passed. It's been a couple years ago, and it was a little guy, about this tall, and he engaged in aggressive acts. He was very aggressive with other people. And I walked in the classroom, there's people with like all these protective gear on their arm. 3 or 4 people around this kid, because this child would aggress and scratch and bite and throw himself at people. And I'm thinking like, wow, this kid, he must be like the Tasmanian devil or something. It's real. And I'm saying, well, can I try to work with him? Can I give him a shot? And they said, oh, okay. Their people are hesitant because they assume, and in their defense, the child was a pretty aggressive little guy. But what I did was I had this box of stuff, and it was all this kind of stuff like I'm showing you, all these little toys, and the first thing I do is I walk up to the guy, and I'm not going to use his name, but I walk up to him, here comes the ball, boop, bop him with the ball, and then I say, watch this, here comes the ladybug. And I'm just making it real easy, like I explained before. I'm just giving him all this stuff real easy. And it didn't take long. He's like just looking, what's going to come out of this box next? What's this guy going to do with me? I'm giving him eggs, and I'm even hugging him and doing all this crazy stuff with him. And in the middle of this, he's having so much fun. He's like, he even started to emit a couple mands, signed mands for me. And they were like, wow, this guy is a miracle worker. I'm not a miracle worker at all. I fall on my face more than I'm successful some days, for sure. But in this case, I used the principles. The principles were strong. And I also knew this principle of making sure that I stop using a reinforcer before it loses its value. So what did I do? Right in the middle of all this, I said, thanks. Put it all in the box, picked up the box, and walked away. And everybody's looking at me like, this guy just had a warning to man, and now right in the middle of it, he stops? Well, it was the right thing to do. Because next time I came back, well, actually, I'll tell you what really happened. When I walked away, what do you think he did? He followed me. He followed me and wanted to interact some more. And therefore, I could use it again. It was strong again. And I once again stopped before it lost its value. If you keep doing something until you get sick of it, the next time it comes back, you're going to be less likely to do it. Stop using things before they lose their value. Okay, how to get the child to ask for what they want. I sort of went through some of this, so I'm not going to cover this. Keep in mind that there are 2 main classes of responding, though. 2 main classes. One kind of response is what's called topographical, where the shape of the response matters. If I'm asking for ladybug, the way I say it is different than if I say Jacob's ladder. Okay? So saying ladder is different in sign language than saying bug. The shape, the form of my response matters. If I was doing this with a selection-based response, all that matters is what is selected. I select a picture of Ladybug. I select a picture of Jacob's ladder. And it doesn't matter how I do it. I could do it with my elbow. I could do it with my nose. All of that doesn't matter how I select it. It's what is selected that controls the listener, which means that transferring from this to talking can be a little more challenging, because if you're shaping up different shapes of non-vocal communication, you can correlate jump with the word jump. You can correlate the sign bug with bug, and you get a different movement, which may help promote talking with vocally. The other thing is there are a place for augmentative devices and picture exchange systems. They are really important, particularly if you've struck out at getting children to use vocal or signing. But one of the things you have to do is, it's actually way more complicated to teach devices than teaching signs. Even though signs may be a little harder to initially establish, because you've got to teach different behaviors. You've got to teach this for bug, this for ladder, this for dog, this for frog. But you can also shape to vocal a little bit more easy. The problem with selection-based systems is also that you've got to teach the child to carry it with them. You also have to make sure that the thing doesn't break, that you get the right programming into the device, or the right picture selection for a picture device. And that actually takes a lot of planning and consideration. The other thing is, with selection-based systems, eventually the child can learn to say bug. They can alter the way they control the listener through how they sign, or through how they say it. Bug, bug, bug. They can alter how they control the listener immediately. To get that same control through a selection-based system becomes very difficult, because you have to use extra words, extra signs, and then the response gets real complicated. The other thing is, with using a selection-based system, if I want to bug, I can bug. I just do it. My hand comes up and I do it. My hands, I always have my hands. They're very portable. Okay? When we're speaking to somebody, it's really important that you don't put too many demands on your listener. Okay? If I am communicating with a device, I could forget the device. I also have to, when I bring it up, bring up the device, search for what I want, press it, and then that takes a little bit longer for the listener. And I've actually timed interactions with devices versus sign language and vocal, and the responses per minute, there's so fewer responses per minute for using a device, because it takes longer. The other thing is, remember what I said earlier? That when we're interacting with somebody, we watch them to see if they're likely to give us what we want. I don't go up to somebody who's like looking away and scowling, and I could watch them. So I could watch Carrie the whole while I'm asking her, bug? Oh, and I could watch it. I could see that she's not giving me the bug, she's just signing bug. Okay. And I could watch it, and I could alter it. Bug! And I could say it again, and I say it, and I get the bug. Okay? I could watch how she responds to me and correct immediately. But how do I watch her if I want a bug and I go here to do this? I lose that critical observational response that is at the core of interacting and communicating with somebody. So that's not to say, do not misunderstand what I'm saying. There are times where you need to go to devices and you need to use PECs, particularly if the child is not acquiring a set of Mands skills through any other ways. I'm just saying that there are some real advantages to sign. The other thing is, you have to teach signs as well as vocals, or signs as well as how to respond to the PECs to listeners. Okay? In other words, what I'm saying is that we may think, oh, everybody understands how to use devices. But do they? Everybody would understand PECs. But do they? I'm not so sure that's the case. I mean, if you go out in the world, you go to a giant shopping center or some Walmart or something like that, and you walk through, watch and see how many people do you see using sign or using devices. Most people communicate vocally because it's what everybody does. And that if somebody came up to you and tried to use a device with you, my guess is your first response, if you were naive to that person having done that, meaning you didn't have experience with doing it, your first response is going to be, what the heck's going on? What is that device? What do I... Somebody would have to say, tell you what to do with it often. Okay? That's not to say that you can't program a device that will say, please give me a whatever. And it tells you that the child's asking for something. You can program that, but even that, in this day and age, people hear devices going off all the time and might need some suggestion. Let me give you another example. I was in a classroom, and the teacher was using a PEX system with the child. And I said, well, are you sure everybody's going to understand this? She said, yeah. I said, well, let's try it out. And one of the icons was of a tape. And I said, well, let me take the tape icon down to the school secretary, and I'll see if I get the tape manding with this. So I took the PEX board down, and I took the tape icon, and I handed it to the school secretary. School secretary took it, looks at the thing, looks at me, she goes, wow, you should have a halo. She had no idea what I was doing. First of all, she didn't know why I gave her the picture. Okay? And basically what would have needed to happen, somebody would have told her, okay, when I come up, here's how he communicates. So, I mean, you have to teach, the point I'm making is for signing, for PEX, for augmentative devices, you have to teach the listener how to respond to that. Okay? And you also want to make sure that you're teaching things that are important, that are going to be useful to the student. Selecting response form is very important. And I can't get into everything regarding this at this point. It would really take too much time. And I think I said a lot of these things already. If you're going to teach sign language, you want to make sure that everybody knows the signs, who's going to interact with the kid, that you're going to teach them. And for students who are just acquiring language, it may not require having a tremendous amount of signs. You're just going to start teaching the things that the child wants at that point. You want to make sure that all people interact regularly with the student, are familiar. You're going to teach the first signs as Mands rather than teaching the child to label or answer questions with signs. And you're also going to want to make sure you're taking data to ensure that the child is learning. You're going to provide lots of opportunities. And you're going to use sign language in conjunction with learning how to speak vocally. So you're going to use procedures that will help the child establish vocal responding. And finally, you're going to need to teach, after the child's command for things, you're going to teach them to use signs to ask for other things. Okay. So I'm not going to cover that, but let's start talking about eye contact a little bit with the Mands frame. One of the things people will often start teaching, and a little bit too early, is the child learns to mand, and they start demanding that the child look at them. You want the child to learn that. But here is the way to teach eye contact initially. Come on up, Carrie. So Carrie has taught me to ask for ball. And I come up, ball, and I ask for ball, and she gives me the ball. And I've learned that. And at first, that's what you want to do. You don't want to demand eye contact. The child's probably going to be looking at the ball. Ball! And she says it and delivers it. Okay, and then she teaches me chicken. Chicken. And I get chicken. So I learn to man. And what I'm doing is I'm looking at the item she's giving me. I ask her bug. I'm looking at the item. I'm not looking at her. How do you get the child to start looking at your eyes? And why would you want the child to look at your eyes? Why do you look at somebody else's eyes when you're talking to them? So you know that they're listening to you, right? So they can give you some... So the eyes sort of tell you what the person's likely to do. So you might not know what I'm thinking, but you might know what I'm thinking about if I'm doing this. I'm thinking about the light, right? I'm looking at the light. I'm looking at the toys. You think, oh, he's going to do something with the toys. Eyes predict what a person's going to do, right? That's why we look at people's eyes. We don't look at people's eyes because there's a koosh ball. We teach the child to look at the eyes because that's not why we look at people's eyes. When was the last time you looked at somebody's eyes because they had something you wanted in front of their face? We also don't look at eyes simply because people tell us to look at eyes. Look at me! That's not why we look at people's eyes, to follow a direction to look at people's eyes. That's not why we do it. Why do we look at people's eyes? Exactly what you said, to find out what they're likely to do, to see if they're listening to you. Okay? So how do we get the child to look at you? If we're not going to hold stuff by our eyes, if we're not going to tell the child, look at me, if we're not going to do that, how do we get the child to look at you? Well, we take advantage of something that's called extinction. So Carrie will run this. She'll run the ball. And ball! And I sign ball and she gives it to me. So now I know ball. Now run the procedure. So this time she's going to show ball. I'm going to sign ball. Ball! And remember, she has taught me every time I do this, I get the ball. So one thing that when you have received reinforcement for doing something, and that reinforcement no longer occurs, when you no longer get what you want, what we tend to do is we either do something different or we do more of the same thing. So the first thing I might do is more ball. I might move more frantically. But eventually I might look at her. And when I look at her, she says ball and delivers it. So all of a sudden, my looking at her provides me with feedback as to whether she's going to give it or not. It's a simple procedure that was written up by Dr. Vince Carbone. And basically the idea here is getting eye contact under the right control. So the first thing you do is teach the child to ask for what you want, and then you just add a little pause. And in that pause, when a variation of responding occurs, when the child looks at you, that's when you deliver the item. That's a really simple, good way to get some eye contact going. Okay, so if we are prompting a child to ask for things, good. If we are prompting a child to ask for things, and what time do we get to? 12, okay, good. If we are teaching a child to ask for things, the first thing we want to know is how we're going to prompt them to do it. If a child cannot echo you, cannot repeat what you say, you're going to have to use an augmentative system of some sort. If you are using sign language, there are two ways of prompting. One way is through a physical prompt. So I have a cracker. Carrie wants the cracker. I'm going to prompt her. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use enough prompt to make sure the behavior occurs, but I'm not going to do this. Please forgive me. I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to take her hands and have her do the whole, I'm not going to do the whole thing for her. That will lead to her doing this. She's just going to hold her hands out. And what she learns is, I do this, somebody takes my hands, moves them around, and I get something. That's not what we're teaching. We're teaching the child that I do this, and I get the cracker. So to do that, we have to be sure to do the least amount of physical prompting as possible. If the child can imitate, it's much easier. Cracker. Cracker, you got it. And I'm going to provide a model. Or if it's candy, I have the candy. Candy. She says candy, she gets candy. If it's the bug, if she can imitate, teaching sign language goes really quickly. But the whole time I'm delivering the item, by the way, I'm saying what it is. Bug, and giving the bug. Okay? So, there are two ways of prompting and prompt fading. Oh, for vocal, by the way, you use an echoic prompt. So if I'm teaching an ask for chicken, it's pretty easy. Chicken.
Chicken.
Chicken. I just say it, and then I deliver it. If we use prompts, if we help the child ask for what they want, which we should, and when we're first teaching, we should prompt as much as we need to get the child to learn to emit demand. But if we're using prompts, we need to be dedicated to figuring out a way to get the child to do it on their own without prompts. And there's two ways to do that I'm going to show you. One is called a within trial transfer. Okay, a within trial transfer looks like this. I will prompt her to ask for chicken. She'll say it. After she says it, I'll move it closer like I'm delivering it, but I'm not going to deliver it until she says chicken again. When she says it the second time, I'm going to deliver it and say what I'm giving her. Chicken. Let me show you. Chicken.
Chicken. Chicken.
Chicken. And I deliver. The advantage of that is she just said chicken. She's likely to say chicken again. When she says it again, that's more independent than I just prompted it. That's a within trial transfer. I could also do a second trial transfer, and a second trial transfer will look like this. Let's say this is a plastic cup, which I'll probably use with a kid, not a glass cup. But I'm teaching, I put just a little bit of, let's say, juice in here. And I prompt her to say juice. Juice!
Juice.
Juice! And I give her the juice and she drinks it. That's the first trial, it was prompted. Now I'm going to run a second trial. I pour a little bit in.
Juice.
Juice! And she says juice, and I pour more in real quick and give her more. Okay? Better responding and more independent. So I run a prompted trial. Juice!
Juice.
She gets it. Then I run a second trial.
Juice.
And she gets more and better. And when I'm delivering it, I say juice as I'm giving it to her. Okay? So, making sure that we are fading our prompts through those two procedures are important. Sometimes the within trial transfer is better early on because the child just said it, they're likely to do it. Eventually, you're going to have to move to the second trial transfer. You're going to have to fade to a second trial to get the child to be independent with manding. And then what you're going to do when you start fading your prompts through either of those transfer trials and the child is quickly responding on that transfer trial, you may be able to move to a trial with no prompt later on. You're looking to get the child independently mandated. You're generally going to keep about well, this is something I need to talk about too, is, okay. Oh, yes. One other thing about prompt fading before I talk about the next thing. Sometimes, if I'm prompting her to say ball, I may not be able to fade the prompt all the way. I might say ball.
Ball.
She says ball, and I get it to her. And then I present it again, and she messes up. Bag.
Bag.
She says bag. Okay. What I'm going to do the next time I run it is going to be ball.
Ball.
And now I'm going to use a partial prompt. Oh.
Ball. Ball.
Ball. And I just used all rather because she got the B with bug, right? Is that what the bag? The B with bag. So I wanted to prompt the part that she needed. And I just use a partial prompt. Okay. So you can fade prompts. You don't have to fade prompts all the way. Sometimes you can go to a partial prompt. Eventually, with partial prompting, you should eventually fade back to a complete fade of the prompts. Error correction. What do you do if an error occurs? There are two kinds of errors that can occur in the Mands frame. Either the child can say the wrong response, or they can scroll responses. So they want the ball, and they go, bug, pen, ladder, ball. That frequently happens. Okay, that's an error. You've got to treat it like an error. When an error occurs, so I have it up, and now the error will occur because I'm not prompting, because I assume she knows it. And I present it, and she says,
Bag.
She says, bag. The first thing I do is remove it. So I'm teaching her, oh, you said it the wrong way. I'm not going to give it to you here, which you've got to be careful, because that could get some children to engage in responses you don't want. Like, oh, I said bag and I didn't. I'm going to do something else to get it. Okay? So you pause. During that pause, I might have her do other things, such as clap your hands, touch your nose, give me 5. And then when I come back to it, I'm going to immediately tell her what to ask for. Ball.
Ball.
Ball. I'm going to prompt her. So the error correction is remove the item, pause. If necessary, have her do other things. Then represent with a prompt and reinforce if she responds appropriately. And of course, you should fade prompts as need be after error correction. Okay. So one thing I want to make sure you remember to do, and I failed to say this earlier, whenever you're teaching Mands, you're teaching multiple things at the same time. So if Carrie really likes the ball, I'm not running ball, 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 because I run the risk of her doing ball to get everything. We have to be able to fade prompts in a way, or we need to teach Mands so that she learns under the condition where ball is present and she wants it, she says ball. In the condition where chicken is present and she wants chicken, she says chicken. Okay? If we don't run multiple things at the same time, teach multiple things, we're not going to get discrimination. She's not going to learn to say what she wants under the right condition. When she wants ball, she says ball. When she wants chicken, she says chicken. We have to teach that skill explicitly. With that in mind, it leads me to something about sign language. One reason sign language fails is because people will often start with this sign, more, okay? And what more may do is it may serve as a form of blocking. It'll block the development of other responses. Why? Because more will get you anything you want. The parents and the teachers learn that when the child does this, you give them something, and they get it. You do this, and you give them something, they get it. So they learn that more controls lots of different things. Please will often do that too. Okay? So more, I mean, I'm not saying don't teach more. I'm just saying teach it way down the line, much, much later. Start teaching where the child does this and gets ball, does this and gets candy, does this and gets hug. You want to teach the child to discriminate those. So when you're first teaching, make sure you're teaching the child to ask for different things they want at different times. Another story, a while ago, I was working with a young girl consulting in a classroom, and we taught her to Mands for candy to get candy. And we were thrilled. This little girl, she had not been able to ask for anything. And here we had taught her to come up to somebody and do candy. We were like, wow, is this cool? But then we presented jump, and guess what she did? Candy. Because we didn't teach her that this is for candy. This was like, I do this and I get something good. So she learned this will be good for anything. And we had a heck of a time stopping her from doing this. So what we needed to do then was put the candy away and teach other stuff where we taught jump, pull, hug, and then eventually we brought candy back. Once we did that, we had her asking for specific things she wanted. Her rate of manding increased pretty quickly. Okay, there are other things we're going to need the child to mand for. One of the things that I wanted to mention at some point in this training is the idea that early on, when we're teaching children to mand, early on what happens is the child doesn't mand enough. They don't have enough responses. But after they learn to mand, sometimes what we get is a child who mands too much. You know? And that's a problem when we have children who are coming up to us, I want this, I want that, I want that. All the time. That's problematic as a parent. So then we have to do things like teach the child skills such as accepting no. And accepting no is a skill. You would not teach accepting no, however, until you've established a pretty good repertoire of mands, where you teach the child in this kind of fashion. Carrie, stand up. And I'm just giving you a brief summary of this. I'm not going to be able to explain all the details. So the child asks for ball.
Ball.
Oh, you can't have the ball, but you can have the ladybug.
Ladybug.
Yeah, have the ladybug, and you can have the ball. So all I'm doing is teaching the child that for a brief while, hearing no and accepting no isn't so bad. They get the ladybug, and not only that, they don't have to wait very long, and they get the ball anyway. All I'm teaching them is no doesn't mean that you're never going to get it. Then what do? I fade in the amount of time between when I bring the ball back. And I also will sometimes, down the road, when she's doing that, in the presence of another thing that is valuable, she wants this, she asks for it, I say no, she gets this. Eventually, I'm going to fade in where I say no, and this one doesn't come up again, where there's nothing there. But I'm going to fade that gradually and systematically. That kind of shaping, teaching no is important. But it's important not until the child has learned to ask for lots of different things. You also want to teach the child to give up reinforcers once they have them. So if I'm teaching her to Mands for chicken, and she has asked for chicken, I can't ask her to ask for chicken again until I get the chicken back. And all of us, or most of us, don't like giving up things that we like that we have, right? So I have to teach her to give up the chicken by offering something else. And a good thing to offer is often a consumable, such as a small bit of food, because I give her the food, she eats the food, and then she has to ask for the chicken again. I am running through those procedures just to say they are important considerations for teaching. What you're going to need to really learn how to do them is to follow some protocols. There are programs that are available on the patent resource file, and I will get that resource file to you at some point. I don't have the URL up here. I will get that URL posted on the patent website for you to access, but they are there. Teaching children to ask other children for things is important. I'm not going to talk about Mands for information, but I do want to teach a critical skill for older learners. Okay, and that is what's called the interrupted chain procedure. What I've been teaching here so far is like a Mands session where you have lots of things, the child asks for it. Remember I said that later on you have to make sure that the child is asking for it in other conditions. This asking for stuff becomes critical for job performance with older students. And it becomes critical through a process called interrupted chain procedure. And let me just demonstrate this real quickly. I'll put a bunch of stuff up here. So let's say I'm teaching a job skill such as setting a table. And I teach the child that the first thing they do is put the plate up. Then they have to put the little plate on top. Then they put the napkin with the forks over there, the glass to the side, and then in the front, and then the mug in front of that. So I teach the child to do this. Along the way, I've taught the child lots of other skills. I taught them to do this. What is it?
Cup.
I taught them the name of the cup. I taught them the name of the... What is it?
Plate.
What is it? Little plate.
Little plate.
What is it?
Little plate.
And what's this?
Big plate.
And what's this?
Little plate.
I've taught them the names of all these things. What's this?
Napkin.
Napkin. And I've taught them the names, and I've taught them where to do it. And then I teach them through a process called task completion how to do this. So I start with what might be called a backward chain, where the very last thing they have to do is put the mug in place, set the table, and she puts the mug. That's setting the table. And then I teach her, set the table, and I teach her to put the glass and then the mug. And she comes over here and does that, of course. So then I teach her all this stuff to where Carrie can come up and do all this like lickety-split. She knows the names of all these things. She knows how to do the task. Now here's where the Mands comes in. I then will move to tell her to set the table, but I will deliberately take the plate and hide it. Okay? And I'll say, set the table. And she'll do it in the right order. She puts the napkin, the plate, and then she gets to that point. And she's probably talking to herself while she's doing this. She's probably saying plate, napkin, because we've taught her all those skills. Now she's at a point where all of a sudden there's a change in conditions that establish the motivation for getting the what, everybody? The small plate, the little plate.
I need the little plate.
The little plate. She'll Mands for it, and I'll say, here's the little plate. Now, in the real world, what I may do is there may be a place where these are kept, like on some shelf, and to get the job done, I have to teach her how to go over and get that. So she Mands for it, and I said, I'll say, they're over in the storage bin, and she has to go to the storage bin to get it. But at first, it's going to be, she says small plate, I give it, and then she completes the task. Every time I run that interrupted chain procedure, I'm doing it with a different item, so it's completely unpredictable. The point I'm getting here is that Mands training progresses from things that we contrive, things that we start at a basic level where we're contriving the motivation for the child to approach us. We want the child to approach us, and then we want to teach the child to ask for what they want in the presence of the item. And we teach a broad range of things. We teach the child lots of responses, so they learn to ask for one thing in the presence of that, and another thing in the presence for that when they are motivated. How much time do I have, Carrie? Okay, I'm going to finish this presentation by showing some videos real quick. And I'm not going to go over data procedures because you can learn those pretty quickly. They're basically probe procedures. Let me start by showing a video of a Mand training session. Here is one with an early learner. And what you'll see is teaching assigned response and shaping vocal. So this is an example of the teacher teaching the child to use a vocal response. So he's doing the puzzle.
Candy. Have two.
And he signed candy there, if you didn't see it.
Moo.
Moo.
Bee.
Bee.
Moo bee.
Bee.
Moo.
Moo.
Bee.
Bee.
Movie.
And all she's doing is shaping. He has the sign. He'll ask for movie without any help. But she's really correlating the sign for movie with saying movie. And she gets the vocal there. And this is a child who wasn't using vocal responses before this training. Okay. Let me show another video here. This is a video of... this is actually a good example of... some of you saw this yesterday. What I'm doing here is I'm teaching this girl to Mand for head pat. Okay? She is vocal. She can repeat what I said, so I can use echoic prompts. And I will blend into this teaching session some of the procedures I talked about. Prompt fading, error correction, and varying the type of reinforcement. In this case, I'm teaching her to ask for head pat. Why did I pick that? Because it's sort of like head squeeze. She already knows how to ask for head squeeze. So having something happen to her head is fun. So if she likes this, she might like this. Okay? And that's where I got the head pat from.
Head pat. Head pat. Squeeze. Bump. Head pat.
Let's get ready.
Now, normally, by the way, I would be saying head pat as I deliver it. She has a tendency to echo too much. That's why I wasn't saying it. The other reason is she's strong echoic skills. I don't need to model it quite as much.
Your day is coming another day.
Car. Call.
Okay, right there, that was a mistake I made. I had her in the chair. I'm going to rock her. Okay? And I did something good there. What I did was I wanted the motivation for her to say rock, to build. So I didn't do anything right away. I just got in the position, and that pause lets the motivation build. And then she's ready to say it, and I waited too long. I should have a little bit quicker said rock, but I waited just a little bit too long. And what did she say? Car. She made a mistake. So then I had to correct it.
Walk. Walk.
So let me show you the error correction there again. I hope
Rock.
Boss.
There.
Walk.
There was my prompt. And I also used the within trial transfer. Rock! She said it. I leaned forward. Rock! And I delivered it again.
Here.
She said it.
Right here.
Do this one.
Do this one.
Okay, let's run.
When we're Mand training, we don't always run Mand. Sometimes we'll intersperse other trials to break it up. That'll keep the motivation to keep Manding strong. It also teaches her some of the real-world contingencies. You don't always just do Mand. Wouldn't that be nice if that's all we did was Mand. Here it is, mixing up the types of Mands.
There you go.
I say scream.
Rock.
Buck. Buck.
That was an example of, she learned head pat. She got it independent at that time. I got the squeeze. She's getting that discrimination down, which is beautiful. Then I went to rock. I was estimating that it's unlikely that she was going to say rock in that situation because I added 3 pretty quick discriminations. I made the decision to use errorless teaching and to prompt before she made a mistake. And then later I'll fade that.
Buck. 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 Ah! Scream. Head pat.
Here's the. Here it comes. Get ready.
Now I moved to a completely different reinforcer. By the way, the rock, the head pat were both learned in this session. She could not ask for them before. She was also a student who had very few Mands before we started man training. She'd spend most of her day jumping on a trampoline, looking out the window. She could be aggressive. She'd run away from teachers. But through this pairing process, making it fun, all of a sudden she's approaching people and we could prompt the Mands. I vary the way I deliver the reinforcer.
Oh. Ball. Here it comes. Get ready. Sit here.
Sorry about that. I'm showing off my athletic prowess. Look at it fall on my head.
Scream.
Rock.
Buck. Buck.
Rock.
Buck. Buck.
That was, I tried a second trial transfer. Did you see that? I rocked her. She said, I prompted her, rock. She said it. I stopped. I waited. She didn't say it. I had to prompt her again. But then I used a within trial. She said it, and I waited a second. When she said it the second time, I delivered rock.
Buck. Buck.
Yeah. Okay, move your chair here. T.
Very good.
T.
This, by the way, is a reinforcer. I'm just, she loves letters, and I'm going to get her to ask for some of those.
Goes right in.
And I make it easy for her. Nobody does anything that's too hard, too long. Okay? If it's easy for you, you'll keep doing. So I'm trying to make it as easy as possible for her and give her lots of different things to do.
You.
You?
Now she's running trials with me.
Let's see. There's you.
R. P.
P.
K.
Get ready.
Very good.
Surprise! What a great, basically what's going on here is man training involves getting motivation. Sometimes novelty will serve as a reinforcer. And she's like, wow, this is great. What's going on here?
Head pat.
Head pat. Head pat.
Okay.
Head pat.
So I can keep going with this, but I'm going to stop there. I have one more video to show before we finish up. I think I'm presenting a lot of detail. Man training is really a pretty technical process, and I tried to make it as simple as possible in here. I don't know if I succeeded. There's a lot more things I could have added. But I want to show you that it isn't so hard after all. Watch this video, and you might get what I'm talking about here. I hope this works. Here we go. Whoops, sorry, hold on. Let me start over here. Why is this not playing? Let me try it with a different player here. I missed it here. That's not working. Oh my, it didn't download here. Let me go back right here. Okay, I'm not going to be able to show you that. So let me show you another video instead to close with.
Zachy, go ahead and get on the computer.
Here is an advanced man, something I didn't show you. And what he's going to do is mand for something that's missing.
You can get on the computer, Zachy.
So he goes to the computer.
You can click on the internet.
Where's the mouse?
What?
Where's the mouse?
I'm not sure where the mouse is. You might need to ask somebody else.
Right there. There's motivation. The child knows what the mouse is. He knows how to operate the computer. And what the teacher deliberately did was not have the mouse there. That sets up the condition. The other thing you saw there, which was beautiful, was the child. The man is missing. He looks at the teacher. Mouse. Manding is so critical to teaching social skills. Teaching social skills involves all these beautiful interactions where we look at somebody, we say what we want. The mand is the high road to getting children to have good social communication skills. But it takes time, it takes a lot of effort. The video I was going to show that didn't work showed two little children, and they were playing with each other. And the one child just loved watching the teachers. And it's a cute little video of this child running a mand session with another child, where the child is asking for beads, beads. And the one child holds up a bead, and the other child goes, beads, and the child gives it to him. And it's so cute because Wyatt in this video is like doing all the things that we need to do as an adult. And the point the video I was hoping to make with that video is, if Wyatt can do it, we can do it. And we can help kids learn this critical skill. So thank you very much, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the day.
Thanks, Mike. The code for today is A as in apple, R as in rabbit, K as in kangaroo, 827. Again, that's ARK 827. And just a reminder that you can complete an evaluation for this session on the Groupio app, and anyone seeking social work CEUs must sign in and out daily at the registration desk. Thanks.